Now, I just want to start this video off by saying that I'm a massive Star Wars fan. And, as a matter of fact, in general, I'm just a massive fanboy. It's easy to keep my attention on a series of something that has to do with fantasy, sci-fi, or anything of the sorts. You know what I mean? I'm the biggest bandwagoner, whatever you want to call it. But this movie had some serious issues. Now, I actually thoroughly enjoyed The Force Awakens. I know a lot of people who were fans of the original trilogy had issues with it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was funny, it was suspenseful, it left a lot of stuff to be discovered in episode 8 and 9, and it was just an all-around great movie. Now, when you look at this Last Jedi, if you remove it from the fact that it's a Star Wars movie and you just look at it as what it is, which is a movie, a sci-fi movie, it's actually pretty good. I'd give it like a 9 out of 10. But when you add in the fact that this is a Star Wars movie, continuing with the theme of Episode 7 and supposed to be, opening up our minds to a new trilogy that will eventually happen sometime after Episode 9, this movie kind of fails to do that. Now, I understand that a lot of people that feel the way I do feel that way differently. Like, they're upset because they had all this time and all of this, effort, basically, and an investment in these theories that turned out to be wrong. Now, I actually kind of like the movie for that. I like when Game of Thrones does that. I like when we're thrown for a loop and we don't know what to expect. This movie not only did that, but it also destroyed the fundamental key values of what a Star Wars movie is. You can't... Oh, man, there's so many... I don't even know where to start off with, so I'll just pick something. Let's start off with the reveal of Rey's parentage, right? So that's like a major deal. We all thought, she's either going to be a Skywalker, she may be a Kenobi, she could be Obi-Wan's granddaughter, she could be a Force birth, similar to what happened with Anakin, where basically the Force impregnated his mother, and then, Anakin was born to set balance to the Force. Now, here's the thing, I don't think that Kylo Ren was telling Rey the truth. I don't even think Rey still knows the truth. I think her lineage may be up in the air, and if I turned out to be correct, that's awesome. You know what I mean? That more props to The Last Jedi. But I think the whole point of it is that you are supposed to believe that, yeah, her parents were nobody and they sold her for liquor money, but I think there's more to that. I think that in those moments when Kylo Ren said, your parents were nobody, they died in some grave on Jakku, I think he's trying, that whole scene, remember, he's trying to turn her to the dark side. Kylo Ren is lying left and right. He's lying to everyone. He's lying to Snoke. He's lying to Rey. He's even lying to himself. So why the fuck is everyone supposed to think that he's lying to Rey in those moments? No. If you look at it as a whole and you look at the entire film, I honestly think, and I bear with me now, I think that there's a strong possibility that Rey could be the twin of Kylo Ren. Just hear me out. Okay, so we know Luke and Leia have this amazing connection through the Force. They shared the womb, so they developed this connection, since before birth, if you want to talk about conception, So they've had that bond since then, and the movie shows us towards the end, right before Luke dies, that him and Leia, they share that bond, and Leia knows that he passes away. Rey also knows too. She can sense it in the Force. Kylo and Rey were said to be linked through Supreme Leader Snoke. Now, I do believe that, yes, Snoke had a hand in linking their minds mentally, but if you remember, they were somewhat connected in The Force Awakens. There were a few moments where you thought, they could sense the other's presence and all this other stuff, and the Force does work in those ways, but I think that there's a possibility that Rey could actually be Kylo Ren's twin. Now, I know that sounds crazy, and you could be like, well, why didn't Carrie Fisher tell her? Well, honestly, Leia and Rey haven't had the time to really sit down and talk about that. Leia knows that if she told Rey the truth flat out, Rey would probably, fly off the handle for a little bit. Now, Rey is a pretty calm individual, but we do know that she can feel the dark side pulling towards her. So Leia, being Force sensitive, will know that and would hesitate to tell her daughter the truth. So it would be an insane shock going in Episode 9 if we come to find out, Rey is someone special. She is from the Skywalker lineage, and the final, battle, so to speak, is going to be between a good Skywalker and a bad Skywalker. Now, I don't want to focus on this too much, but I still think there's a possibility. The movie was showing us how Luke and Leia had the connection, and then they jump into Kylo and Rey having this connection. Now, they do connect at the end of the movie, and Rey basically shuts Kylo Ren out, but Snoke is dead, so how is that bond still there? Now, it could be argued that Kylo Ren is strong enough to form that bond mentally, with using his own Force abilities, but I don't think so. I think I think he is a strong individual, and he might have been able to, continue that link. But I think there's something deeper than that. I think they are mentally linked the same way that Luke and Leia are, because I still think there's a possibility that Rey may in fact be her daughter. Now just wait to hear me out for a second. I know you're probably like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? Obviously, they're not twins, because one would realize that, they knew each other when they were growing up, because Rey wasn't dropped off on Jakku until she was at least 4 or 5. You know what I mean? She's walking around. She's able to walk independently, and she's pretty small. So I'm assuming she's around the age of 5 or 6, so she should remember, theoretically, that early part of her life of living with Princess Leia, Han Solo, and Kylo Ren, a.k.a. Ben Solo. But, it's not necessarily completely out of context if she has something which is like a forced memory wipe. So let's say those early years of her life she doesn't remember. It could be something, like, look, this is obviously just a theory, and it's a half-baked theory. It's not even something that you should really take with too much credibility, but it's possible, and I do think that it would explain some of the connection that Kylo and Leia have. You got to remember, in the first movie, Rey kind of has no idea who Kylo is, but Kylo kind of has an idea of who she is. He knows. He goes, "It is you." You remember that when he's like torturing Rey, and she's able to push back at him. So if they had that mental connection, it would just make sense that she was using her part of that mental connection to push him away. Now, I do think that the timeline won't add up. First of all, why would Han Solo and Leia get rid of one of their kids? You know what I mean? What I could think is if they aren't twins, or I don't know, maybe they could start to see that Ben was starting to turn to the dark side and they didn't want to risk it with both of their children. It just doesn't make sense, but it is a fun theory to discuss. So you guys, let me know what you think down below, if you think this theory has any credibility, and if you want me to do a video mainly just focusing on Rey's lineage. Another thing that I kind of had an issue with, a lot of people kind of agree with me on this, but it was the opening joke. We have General Hux and Poe basically doing like a crank yankers, like a prank call kind of thing. And yes, don't get me wrong, that kind of humor is hilarious. I'm a big fan of having unexpected humor in what's supposed to be a serious movie. But in the opening scene, not so much. And that kind of corny humor in the opening scene, also not so much. It didn't need to go on that long. Like, I get it. He's trying to stall. He's making the audience aware that, not everything is so serious. But I feel like Rian Johnson might have been a major fan of Deadpool, and he's just like, yo, let's have all these third wall break comedies. Let's make fun of Star Wars in a Star Wars movie. And yes, that is creative, but when it comes to Star Wars fanboys, we're kind of sensitive towards that. Like, don't make fun of what the principles of what it is to be a Jedi. Don't make fun of the seriousness of a situation for that long. And then in the opening scene, like, Disney put in my mind that this is the darkest Star Wars movie yet, but it's opening with a fucking joke, a corny joke at that, and it goes on so long. Like, no, that's not how you introduce the idea of, something special about a Star Wars. It's just not a very good opening scene. And then, not to mention with that, the dialogue there, it was almost like it was written by, an amateur. I just didn't enjoy that. And when you're starting off a Star Wars movie, you want the opening scene to be insane, to let you know, hey, you're watching a Star Wars movie. But, opening with a corny joke like that, not so much. Another thing that I had an issue with was Captain Phasma. That's more of like a personal kind of thing. Is the actress who plays Captain Phasma is Gwendolyn Christie. She plays Brienne of Tarth on Game of Thrones. So I, was excited to see that, we got like 3 minutes of Captain Phasma in the first movie, and she was set to be this major character. I understand that a lot of her scenes got cut, but we had this whole second movie to get to see her, and she honestly doesn't show up until a bit of the way in, and then it's very underwhelming. It's extremely underwhelming, as a matter of fact. Spoiler alert for this whole thing, you probably shouldn't have clicked on this video if you hadn't seen the movie yet, but she ends up dying. Like, it's not exactly known. We do know that her armor this time can somehow block blaster bolts. In my opinion, if someone has armor that can block blaster bolts, why the is it not given to the entire First Order army? Like, why would you just give it to one character who's not even that good with a baton? Like, Finn, who's a janitor, is able to wipe her out, and she's supposed to be like this battle-hardened commander, like this. It just didn't make much sense. But anyway, the way that they killed her was a cop-out. That leads me into the way Snoke died was also a cop-out. Like, I understand that it's frustrating to have your theory blown up in your face, but that happens to me all the time. I'm a Game of Thrones aficionado, so I'm used to that kind of, that kind of crap happening. That's not why I'm mad. I'm just mad because it doesn't make sense. You can't build a character up to be this mysterious force and then wipe them out. You know what? The more I think about it, the more I kind of am opening up my mind to that idea. Is they basically pulled a Game of Thrones. That's what they did with Ned Stark season 1. That's what George R. R. Martin did with Ned Stark book 1. They build them up and then they take them down ever so quickly. I just wasn't expecting that. And maybe that shock value is kind of what pissed me off a little bit. But I feel like it's not just that they snuffed him out before he was given a chance to develop as a character and before we're given some of his backstory to make his death important. I feel like it was just the way he died. It was lackluster. Like, all of the lightsaber battles in this movie. Now, okay, the scene with the Praetorian Guards was pretty good. Honestly, the choreography in Episode 2 and Episode 3, Attack of the Clones and the Revenge of the Sith, I think the choreography was better. Like, that's just the fanboy side of me. I want to see motherfuckers who can use the Force. I want to see them use the Force to flip around and, like, do all types of badass shit. Now, I understand that Kylo and Rey's training was not finished, but Kylo has actually been trained with a lightsaber. And yes, this scene was good, but honestly, just like Snoke's death, it was underwhelming. Like, if you want to impress me in a Star Wars movie, you honestly can put a potato on screen for 2.5 hours as long as there's a 10-minute badass lightsaber duel. Like, that's what I hold dear and near to my heart. Like, yes, the complexity of the story and the depth of the characters, it's all well and good, but honestly, show me a damn laser sword on screen flipping around doing some cool shit, because that's what initially got me invested in Star Wars. Okay, so it's like, if you want to relate it to Game of Thrones, and if you completely removed dragons from Game of Thrones, well, then it would just be like a period piece drama. I'd still be interested in it because yes, boobies everywhere, but I mean, you're removing a key element that attracted me to the story to begin with. So obviously I'm going to be pissed off about that. So yeah, going back to Snoke's death. This dude was led up to be this badass, insane type of character, and then he was basically split in half before he could even swing a lightsaber. Like, there was this big emphasis on the ring that he had. Everyone thought that it was a dark crystal that was basically that the Sith used to power their lightsabers. Everyone thought that he was so badass, he didn't even need a lightsaber. He just has that crystal in his hand, and that's how he, was able to just do all this insane. No, he got split in half before we could even see that. I understand killing him in the second episode of this new trilogy, Episode 8, is insane, because honestly, we all thought that he was going to be the major villain. That's like a good plot twist, but at least give him one badass moment before he dies. Not just walking around decrepit, waving his hands about all willy-nilly, wearing some silken golden robes. Like, this guy's been around since before the prequels. Show us that. Show us that he's an insane fighter and that Kylo Ren can't just take him out like that. Now, there's a possibility that he survived, although I don't think that he survived, but if you guys remember in Episode 1, Darth Maul was actually cut in half, and in Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars Clone Wars, he actually comes back. He is able to get saved, and he has like these basically robotic spider legs put on him until he can have like full legs made for him. So if that's the case, Snoke could survive that way, because technically Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars The Clone Wars are canonical to this, the new trilogy and everything. So it is possible, but I don't think that. Really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap this up. I'm going to go watch Star Wars The Last Jedi for a second time. They're going to get more of my money, and hopefully that makes me enjoy it more. Now, I'm not expecting too much because I have some major issues that I think won't be addressed or changed until Episode 9 comes out. I will say, in conclusion, Rian Johnson did a fantastic job. He honestly, he expanded the Star Wars universe so that, he kind of made it, if this is true about Rey's parents, he kind of made it seem that, not just the Skywalkers and the Kenobis are special. Almost anyone can be special. And that idea I do appreciate so much, because that makes me realize that in this next set of trilogy, or in these next movies over the next 10 years, Star Wars is going to be able to expand past the Luke Skywalker, the Anakin Skywalker, the Darth Vader saga. We'll be able to see more of those sides. Now, honestly, I would love for the new trilogy to take place during the Knights of the Old Republic time period, which is like 1,000 years before the prequels. That would be amazing, because then you have an entirely new cast of characters. The galaxy is in a different, a totally different time period. And honestly, there were way more Jedi back then. So I think as far as like lightsaber battles and duels and Force usage, it's an amazing, and you know, Rian Johnson is able to expand our minds into doing so. I just don't agree with every single direction he took in the film. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video, maybe share it with your friends. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews. Oh wait, before you go, if you guys want me to do another sort of like Star Wars commentary video, let me know down below in that comment section, and I'll be sure to do so. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews: The Last Jedi.